Hello everyone, and welcome to the Transfer Pricing by BaseFirma podcast series. I'm Ricardo Rosero, Managing Partner of BaseFirma, and today I'm hosting this episode on the relationship between artificial intelligence and transfer pricing. A common question that I hear often is what's the role that AI has or will have in the tax field, and in particular helping with transfer pricing compliance requirements. As AI is affecting more and more industries, and AI keeps improving, mimicking human behavior and decision making, we want to find out if AI will ultimately replace us, humans, when dealing with all tax and transfer pricing matters. To answer that question, I have invited today two special guests. Ivo Santamaria, Director of BaseFirma based in Miami. For over 21 years, Ivo has led our innovation and technology department, and Ivo creates and develops sophisticated transfer pricing models and tools that we use when advising our clients. And we also have here Steve Tammerijn, who's a partner of our network firm Intra Pricing Solutions based in Amsterdam. Intra Pricing Solutions is the creator of TPGenie, and I think it's one of the best and more advanced transfer pricing documentation tools in the global market. Okay, so let's dive into the topic by first asking you, Ivo, to explain to our listeners what are the challenges faced by companies when dealing with transfer pricing compliance. You've been consulting and assisting companies for several years. So is there an instance or a point that you've seen when companies start considering if automation or AI could make it easier for them to deal with the increasing burden of transfer pricing global compliance?
Sure. Thank you, Ricardo. Transfer pricing documentation follows a deductive process with several steps that have to build a possible rejection of a hypothesis, which is if the transactions are arm's length or not. To do that, the document need to gather information to build a functional analysis, provide a characterization of the transactions and the part involved. You need to select a method. You need to search and select comparables. You have to screen them. You have to prepare a benchmark, a conclusion. You have to take care that the conclusion that you reach are consistent, not with the past documentation, but also with the documentation of your related parties. If the story you're telling is consistent across the globe. So there are many little steps where we have, regulations that limit or sometimes even suggest what is the path to follow at each one of these steps. But there is also a lot of freedom when preparing transfer pricing documentation. This degree of freedom probably is not available in other tax document fields, right? And so it's obviously companies who might look into AI to have some additional help in following all of the steps of documentation. Not on the documentation side, the challenge of documentation. And there is also the risk assessment side, like looking at the present and looking at the future. AI can help us a lot with scenario analysis. Yeah, providing possible outcomes that you cannot expect at the moment, right? And also analyze them in a relatively fast way.
Yeah, I agree, Ivo. And I also see that AI could help us with, in particular, with those repetitive components that are part of a transfer pricing study. And with so many countries enacting transfer pricing rules, country-by-country requirements, master file, local file, disclosure forms, it's no wonder that the companies are looking for ways to automate their processes. And as you said as well, to be used as a risk assessment tool, producing models, scenarios that we can test, and AI could help us as well to analyze those outcomes. Now, I would like to ask you, Steve, to tell us where we stand right now. So what are the trends and recent developments that you see in the tax and transfer pricing fields? And is it already possible to use AI for assisting with some components of transfer pricing documentation?
Of course, Ricardo. Thank you. So to start, basically, it's good to also start with the definition. You already briefly touched upon it, but basically what AI is the theory of development of computer systems to be able to perform the tasks that we normally require human intelligence for. So that could be visualization, speech recognition, decision making, translation between languages, and especially data analysis and structuring of that data. So if we look where we are now and we see what the trends are in artificial intelligence and especially in the field of transfer pricing, it's massive. So in the last year, there have been significant developments with Chat GPT, where, for example, in the past, you could provide a prompt, let's say a query of about 4,000 characters and ask your question. And a couple of months later, this was already 25,000 words. So the amount of information that you now can retrieve and analyze in more detail using AI has taken a massive increase. To give a good example, 2 years ago, if you look at how Chat GPT was functioning with an exam, it would pass a lot of exams, but not end on the top. And now you can use AI to do the same exam and maybe in the top 10 or 5%. So the accuracy has improved, the quality has improved. In the past, you could only use older data that was sort of dumped into the system. And now you can almost use real-time information. From a practical point where this is already used for is for functional analysis, for example, to give a description of certain functions, risks, and assets. So that's the simple thing. But maybe also I'll do an analysis of the industry, the competition. So the quality of those outputs is already very good and useful for transfer pricing documentation. But also one of the things that Ivo briefly touched upon is the analysis of data to predict and do some forecasting and some planning. So the amount of data you can put in those AI systems and make analysis a lot quicker than you would normally even do as a human is already quite significant. And this trend is continuing. So the future is still a little bit of a mystery where we're going because of the speed of the developments, but it's becoming more and more useful. So these are some of the things that we see, and especially since tax authorities are requiring filings in an electronic way, CBCR, upcoming Pillar 2. So it's good to be able to have that type of data and analyze that in an efficient way using AI as well.
I agree with you, Steve, that the future is a mystery and the speed of the development is unbelievable. And as you mentioned, AI can help with components of function analysis, industry analysis, and economic analysis. Companies with so many intercompany transactions, and those companies that work with so large data sets, they have to test their transactions on a segmented or an aggregated manner. But now with AI, they can potentially analyze those transactions on a product-by-product basis. So that makes the analysis more accurate and detailed.
Definitely, and also the risk assessment and risk mitigation has become a lot easier using those tools. But of course, you need to learn how to use it in the right way. So it's not only benefits.
Yeah, and I see AI almost as a co-pilot. And we are the pilots that decide how and when to use a tool like AI. Hey, Steve, you mentioned that AI is obviously getting better on a variety of fronts, including translation between languages. And we as consultants, we help clients translating documentation to comply with local requirements. I see that the tools like TPGenie that you guys develop, you guys use already AI to assist with the translations to local languages, correct?
Definitely, and the quality of the translation in the last couple of years has increased as well significantly. The number of languages that are available have also increased. So it's becoming more and more easier for taxpayers to be compliant and say, for Poland, I want to have my file translated into Polish, or for the Italians to have it in Italian, or of course in Spanish. This is all possible now and wasn't possible before in a sufficient amount of quality.
Yeah, that is great. So it is clear that AI is already here and is affecting the transfer pricing industry. Now, I want that we focus our discussion on how to address the potential challenges and concerns of using AI for transfer pricing purposes. Ivo, can you please tell us from your consulting perspective, what are the risks and challenges that companies need to keep in mind when considering the use of AI? For example, how to address data privacy issues, security issues, and how important is human oversight and expertise?
Yes. As a challenge, several challenges I could pinpoint here. One could be, for example, regarding the quality of the data included in the documentation, right? AI, large language models, have been known to include data that probably wasn't as accurate as it might look on the surface into their reasoning. Also, sometimes, not sometimes, often, there is a reasoning and there are recommendations or conclusion provided developed by an AI model that we do not understand exactly how did they get there. And if we, the consultants or the taxpayers, do not understand exactly how they got to the certain recommendation or conclusion, how can we defend it under an audit or a dispute, right? Regulatory issues as well. Regulations are in practice even though are broadly similar in the transfer pricing world. In practice, there are several little differences, especially in the compliance field, that probably AI could not take into account. That are part of the quality of the documentation. And there's also challenges regarding the privacy of the data, right? Security issues, the need for encryption, the need for anonymization of the process, and that, especially privacy, I would say.
Hey, and with so many challenges, how do you see the practical use of AI? Is it a tool that, from your perspective, simplifies certain repetitive tasks, but will never replace expert judgment and human decision making?
At this stage, I can see it that can provide help for starting, like building an initial approach to an analysis that then the human expert should review, right? And also can be used at the end of the process, right? Like to validate the consistencies of what is being provided.
Yeah, so certainly human judgment is always going to be essential when using AI. Steve, you coming from the software developer industry, what advice would you give to our listeners who might be considering the use of AI for transfer pricing, and how you see the role of human oversight in this new environment?
Yeah, I think what is important is for people that want to use AI as well. Like with any technology, it's important to do that in a proper way. I would almost compare it to having to drive a car, where you first need to learn a little bit about the theory and the do's and don'ts, and do a driving examination. And it's the same with AI. So you should be very careful with inserting in the questions that you ask the AI where you provide information that is sensitive or confidential. Don't provide any names of people in there, and be careful with that, because in the cloud, the information is somewhere stored. So you need to ensure the safety and security of the data. And even the output. AI can lie. A famous case in the US with a lawyer who had some review of jurisprudence done by AI, and it gave fake court cases as a reference. And it was very difficult to distinguish this. And I think in the future, it will become even more difficult because it's mimicking more human behavior and phrasing of the people. So now we have AI that is used to determine if an output is generated with AI in order to make that distinction. So tax authorities will probably use that to review documentation and see, okay, this part is generated with AI, or maybe everything. Maybe have a specific audit focusing on certain things. But also the human component should not be overlooked. You always need to think, does it make sense to write this down? AI can give a result that is quite substantial, and sometimes less is more. So the human factor is still very important to interpret results. And in most cases, AI is not transparent enough to say, this is where we get the data from. There's now a court case with a lot of famous writers that are arguing, you used our books for machine learning, and now other people can produce books in the style of our writing, for which we spent decades perfecting our style. So those things are essential. Never underestimate the human factor.
I like what you said, and it's totally true that AI can lie, and it's our responsibility to use it cautiously. Steve, can you give our audience some examples of how you guys are using AI for producing transfer pricing documentation?
Yes. One thing where we use the AI is to retrieve company information from companies for our own database, where we felt there were insufficient descriptions of the companies. So we asked AI to retrieve additional information about those companies. We did manual checks on the quality of the data, because we don't fully rely yet on the quality of those systems. And it was the result was very high in terms of quality and accuracy as well. So this is something that positively surprised us. This is one thing where we use it, but also, as I mentioned in the beginning, to retrieve information on industry analysis. Sometimes you pay thousands and thousands of dollars or euros for reports analyzing the industry. And with the AI, it's very easy to retrieve that from open sources. But again, AI doesn't always provide the source where they get the information from, or it combines from multiple sources. So the transparency is not always there. And I think that is something that is required. A last point where we use it for is to analyze internal inconsistencies in a transfer pricing document. So once you have created your document, you can ask AI to find inconsistencies or things that are illogical within the document. And then you can find out that in one part of a paragraph, you have a total of FTEs of 100. And in your column below, the sum total is 90. So you're missing 10. So those are the things where AI can help, and is already helping us. And the feedback we get from clients is already very positive, because it decreases the amount of time spent. In a lot of cases, it's also improving the quality, but we still need the human factor.
Yeah, I can see that it helps with retrieving different types of information. But I like what you said, Steve, about the manual checks, which are key for checking on the quality and consistency of the information. Okay, so now that we know how AI is being used in the present, as a last discussion topic, I would like to look at the future. So, Ivo, can you tell us what future trends and possibilities you expect with the continuous development of AI? Any predictions or potential innovations in the field?
Yes. Well, we often talk about AI as one general big thing, but how it will be implemented in the actual activity, in this case of preparing transfer pricing documentation or preparing risk assessment for transfer pricing, maybe could come from a different way. Maybe it could come from several specialized tools, right, that are based in AI. Yes, because it's not necessarily we want to open like a ChatGPT page and ask all our questions there. Maybe we need some very specific help that from the user side is better to get from smaller tools that are dedicated to certain tasks, right? And we see that large firms are already preparing their own AI models based on their internal documentation. For example, Bloomberg has already done so because they feel that with all the knowledge that they have inside their firm is probably even more useful to them going forward than other knowledge coming from literature or internet forums or whatever is feeding ChatGPT today, right? So specialized tools, right? That's a way that we could probably in tax department could be trusted a little bit more than the generic models, right? That's one way. Again, a good example is what Steve just told us. Helping with the consistency inside the document is very important for us. Also, what is called natural language processing, which is understanding the document in front of you to collect additional data. The risk mitigation, right? Because it can help in identify or even mitigate compliance risk, reducing likelihood of audit, disputes, and penalties. Those are some couple of ideas I can have now.
Yeah, and you and I have been talking about using our own internal data, models, all the information that we have collected in the last 21 years as a source of reliable information to feed our own AI tool. Steve, how do you see the future? For example, are you expecting regulations to control and limit the use of AI? And what will be the implications of AI for businesses and tax departments?
I think it's maybe in a way how transfer pricing has developed over the last decades. In the beginning, it was a little bit of rocket science, you know. We were the esoteric experts writing this file with benchmarks that cost a lot of money. And after that, it became a lot more compliance. And I think what is happening with AI, it will help more with the compliance part. It can go in multiple directions. One of the things that can impact that is legislation relating to AI. There's already a lot of high-profile people from Google, from Apple, from Tesla who are asking for legislation on AI, and that can even have an impact in where we can go. In the beginning, when ChatGPT was released, soon after, Italy banned it. So this is one of the things that can have an impact in how far the developments are allowed to go. So there could be a cap from the regulatory bodies that will limit the use of AI. I think we have TPGenie, and I think the genie is out of the bottle, and it's very difficult once it's out of the bottle to put it back. So my assessment is that, you cannot stop this anymore. And it's going fast. Tax authorities are already using it. We have been using it for a couple of years. We have clients that are using it. And I think if I look in the future, we will not be made redundant, but it will be a tool to do our work maybe more faster and efficiently. And we can serve maybe more clients and improve the quality and have a little bit more consistency in how we approach certain things and manage a lot of risks better and have a better overview. But we're not going to be without a job. We do need to educate ourselves on AI and where it's going and what the implications are for our clients, and find opportunities for our clients as well. but we don't need to worry that we're going to be out of a job anytime soon.
Good to know that we won't lose our jobs. And I agree that we need to keep up with technology so we can learn to use it to be more efficient, improve our consistency in what we do, and dedicate our time to think and to look at the big picture of things. Before we conclude our podcast, I want to provide our listeners with your final message on this topic. Ivo, please.
Yes, my take is that for all the potential AI has for transforming transfer pricing and tax compliance in general, in the short and medium term, it still be a complementary tool rather than a replacement for the human expertise, because it's the human eye that is crucial for interpreting the results, validating whatever recommendation it comes out with the model, and making the decision based on the context, because it's ultimately the practitioner that can ensure that the output of the AI model aligns with the company business goals and strategies. In summary, I think that effective AI implementation require addressing all these challenges that we commented before, staying updated with regulatory changes, the data privacy and security needs to be ensured, maintain a balance between the automation, AI-driven automation, and human oversight in order to make well-informed decisions and comply with regulatory requirements ultimately.
Steve, what are your thoughts?
My final take on the subject is that the genie is out of the bottle. There are many developments in the area of AI relating to data analysis, error analysis as well, visualization of data that can aid users, that can be both tax authorities, advisory firms, and multinationals, to do their jobs. For example, risk management, scrutiny of transfer pricing, documentation, but also time saving in the creation of that type of documentation. The developments are happening so quickly in succession that we cannot predict how fast things will go and what the purpose will be for those new developments. But the fact is, the genie is out of the bottle, and it's going to be very exciting to see what new functions and features will be available to aid in the creation of transfer pricing documentation, managing the risks, but also for tax authorities to maybe do some analysis and scrutiny during audits.
Well, this has been a very interesting discussion. And I want to thank both of you for providing our listeners with your great input and insights on the topic of AI and transfer pricing. It is clear for me that we need to keep adapting to changes in technology, and that AI can be a great tool to help us in the transfer pricing field with things like more efficient compliance, risk assessment, monitoring, and audit support. But it is important to remember that our human expertise is still crucial in making the right judgments, understanding complex tax and transfer pricing regulations, and making sure that companies' transfer pricing policies are properly documented and implemented. I also want to thank our listeners and invite all of you to stay tuned for our next transfer pricing podcast. Thank you.